The Han tribe's technological whiplash has reached a fever pitch, all thanks to Chief Luo Chong, a man whose brain is a walking industrial revolution starter kit. While his people were still grappling with steam engines, his resident tech geek, Luo Chong, unveiled a magnificent self-chiming mechanical clock, a masterpiece of precision. But for Luo Chong, a desktop marvel is merely a prototype. He immediately charted the future, a monumental clock tower for the capital and an entire universe of personal timekeeping, from pocket watches to wristwatches. This grand vision is being fueled by beer. An entire beverage industry, from custom glass bottles to mass-produced caps, is being willed into existence. The mere rumor of chilled drinks has already turned the frozen northern frontier into a potential gold mine, birthing plans for a massive ice factory. Yet, amidst this whirlwind of progress, one machine sputters in the corner, a Chinese typewriter so maddeningly impractical it threatens to halt the spread of knowledge. And its creator can only pray that the chief can solve the very problem he invented. That tiny stall of a printing department, tucked away in a dusty corner of the school, resembled a neglected bride. It was bound to throw a tantrum sooner or later. The number of books in the tribe was multiplying as if by magic. The population was swelling as if boiling over. The future number of schools would have to spring up like mushrooms after a spring rain. All of this was a deafening clamor in Luo Chong's mind, a constant drumming that screamed one thing. Old friend, your printing department is about to be steamrolled by the wheels of progress. Industrial upgrade, personnel upgrade, tool upgrade, scale upgrade. These 4 great upgrades were like 4 great mountains, weighing on him so heavily that he felt he would suffocate if he didn't act immediately. He was determined to first have Bai Qi and his crew whip up the hand-cranked mimeograph machine and the Chinese character typewriter, his 2 pet projects. Then, when he moved the capital south with his entire clan, he would simply scoop up this whole den of tech heads in one fell swoop. At that time, he would establish a grand national publishing house right in the capital city. He could print whatever he wanted, in whatever quantity he wanted. Luo Chong even mused that if technology could be nudged forward just a little more, a Han tribe daily wouldn't be a pipe dream. But a newspaper needed more than just a printing press. Paper-making technology also had to be taken from musket to cannon. The current method, slow, manual sheet forming, manual drying, and manual pressing, was at the turtle's pace of a craft workshop. In the future, it all had to be replaced by steam-belching, industrialized assembly lines. And the paper itself couldn't keep popping out one sheet at a time like handkerchiefs. It needed to be in massive rolls, like toilet paper, so it could run whoosh through the presses. Now that was efficiency. Late into the night, Luo Chong was still hunched over in his study, scribbling furiously in a memorandum by the light of an oil lamp, detailing the southern migration plan. Besides the cultural industries of the paper mill and printing department that had to be packed up, the industrialization of the South was in desperate need of talent and machinery. He figured he had to find time in the next 2 months to visit New Steel Prefecture and have a little heart-to-heart with De Li and Lin Fei. Yes, without disrupting their normal production, he had to poach some of their skilled personnel. That was the most pressing matter at hand. Just as Luo Chong had sorted out his plans, before his seat was even warm, he heard a rush of hurried footsteps. Thump, 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 outside the door. A Praetorian guard burst in, presenting a letter with both hands. The letter was from that young rascal, Chu Bing. It stated that the Shin's guard he led had already passed the crystal mining area upstream and was not far from Weishan Prefecture. With a bit more speed, they could be back in a matter of days. Reading this, the corners of Luo Chong's mouth stretched into a wide grin. He tapped his fingers lightly on the letter, the rhythm itself a cheerful tune. However, the letter mentioned something else. It said the crystal mining area had no permanent garrison from the tribe. It was like an unregulated mine where anyone passing by could dig a few shovelfuls. Since the Shin's guard was passing through and had the proper tools, Chu Bing had an idea. He wanted to apply for a 2-day work period to use local resources and generate some revenue for the tribe. Thus, he had sent this request for instructions from the road. This kid actually has a good head for business. Luo Chong chuckled and shook his head, then picked up his brush to approve it. Refuse? How could he? The Han tribe's demand for crystal ore was as fundamental as a starving man's need for rice. Of course, it wasn't for polishing into sparkling jewelry for the ladies to show off. This stuff was an industrial treasure. Although the tribe already had a glass factory, it only produced common goods, suitable for cups and plates. But for precision instruments, like the delicate flasks and beakers in the Lakehart Island laboratory, one absolutely needed special glass, made from crystal. Why? This crystal glass had 2 killer features. First, purity. It was as clear as a young girl's gaze, without a trace of impurity. The glass made from it had an astonishingly high light transmittance. Just think of a camera lens or a complex sniper scope. If it was foggy inside, what would be the point? Second, it was tough. Specifically, it was heat and corrosion resistant. Anyone with a basic understanding of chemistry knows that test tubes and beakers in a lab are constantly having their bottoms licked by the flames of an alcohol lamp. Ordinary glass would soften into a puddle of goo after a short while on the fire. But this crystal glass would remain steadfast even if you heated it red hot. With all sectors of the tribe developing at a fever pitch, the demand for this special glass would only grow. So, Chu Bing's proposal to mine along the way was like a pillow delivered to a sleepy man. How could Luo Chong possibly disapprove? He immediately dashed off a reply to Chu Bing. In the letter, he first engaged in a bit of professional flattery before changing the subject to drop a major piece of gossip. Zhang had told him just a few days ago that Chu Bing's wife had given birth to a big, healthy boy. Mother and son were both doing well. Luo Chong made a point of including this to cheer the young man up. Finally, he didn't forget to add a fatherly piece of advice. You're a father yourself now. Don't you dare go down into the mine shafts for dangerous work like this. Stay safe, you hear me. The Shin's guard was coming home. The news grew wings. That very day, Luo Chong issued a series of commands to Lu Guangzhu, the prefect of Weishan. Post the notices. The whole city must know that our heroes are returning in triumph. Organize the ceremony. Tomorrow, all available citizens are to gather at the docks with a thunder of gongs and drums and a cacophony of firecrackers. Prepare the victory banquet. The soldiers must have hot food to eat and the strongest wine to drink the moment they set foot on home soil. Luo Chong even had a tall wooden, triumphal arch erected overnight at the docks, draped with banners and adorned with fresh flowers. The sense of ceremony was cranked to the absolute maximum. As notices were plastered across the streets and the arch rose from the ground, the news of the Shin's guard's imminent return swept through the 8 prefectures of Hanyang like a wildfire. They had won a great victory, expanded the borders, and captured tens of thousands of slaves, all with minimal casualties on their own side. If this wasn't a great victory, what was? And a victory had to be celebrated. Celebrated to the high heavens. This was a God-sent opportunity to build national confidence, and a shrewd man like Luo Chong would never let it pass. He wanted every single person to know that being a member of the Han tribe was something to be immensely proud of. As the news spread, the entire Hanyang region erupted. Families with relatives serving in the Shin's guard could not sit still. Young wives holding babes in their arms, gray-haired parents leading their grandchildren. They all converged on Weishan Prefecture from every direction like streams flowing into a river. They had enlisted, trained, and then been sent straight to the north to fight legendary cannibals and man-eating monsters. For more than a year, which of their family members hadn't had their heart in their throat? Now, their loved ones were finally coming home. The sheer excitement was impossible to describe. The docks were a sea of people. A young woman lifted her child high above her head, hoping to be the first to catch a glimpse of her husband. An old man's clenched fists were white at the knuckles, his eyes staring until they ached, gazing out across the river. Everyone was waiting for their heroes, their family. Of course, there was some regret. The soldiers of the Shin's guard came from all corners of the land. The families in the distant Tuahai prefecture to the south and the 3 prefectures of the grasslands were destined to miss this grand welcome ceremony. But as long as a person was alive, there would always be a chance to meet again. A moment like this could wait. Whoa, whoa. A low, long-horn blast cut through the din of the docks, followed by the earth-shaking boom, 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 of several massive oxhide drums. On the river, a vast fleet of ships slowly approached the shore. On the decks, thousands of soldiers stood in solemn formation. They carried long rifles on their shoulders, tipped with half-meter-long, gleaming bayonets. The cold light glinting off the forest of steel seemed sharp enough to pierce the sky. Crash! Heavy wooden planks were laid between the decks and the docks, forming countless ramps. The soldiers, organized by squads, began to disembark with perfectly synchronized steps. Their military boots struck the wooden planks with a heavy, rhythmic thud, 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 each step seeming to land on the very heartbeat of the crowd. On the shore, beneath the specially built triumphal arch, the people were packed shoulder to shoulder. They held baskets filled with dried meat, flatbread, rice dumplings, and bottles of white wine, desperately pushing them forward. Soldier. Li Erju from the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Company. Do you know him? Is he alive? An auntie yelled at the top of her lungs. Mama, lift me higher. I still can't see Papa. A small, tearful voice cried out. My husband. You're finally back. The baby and I missed you so much. Our son can say dada now, but he's never even seen you. A young army wife sobbed, tears streaming down her face. Just then, a child of about 2, held aloft by his mother, spotted a figure in uniform and suddenly called out in a tiny, milky voice, "Dada." That single word was like a key, instantly unlocking the floodgates of the soldiers' tears. These iron-willed men, who shed blood but not tears on the battlefield, felt their eyes redden in an instant. They were fathers, too. They were sons and husbands. They too had children of about the same age at home. Would they also be calling out "Dada" in that same small voice? However, just as the families were excitedly searching the ranks for their loved ones, at the very end of the procession, a dozen soldiers carried a dozen black-lacquered coffins, walking slowly down the ramps. The black coffins were like colossal stones dropped into a sea of joy. Thump! Every heart in the crowd sank. The air seemed to freeze in that moment. Everyone knew what was inside them. No matter how great the joy of victory, it could not erase the pain of sacrifice. At that very second, the smiles on the faces of the families who had searched from beginning to end without finding their loved ones instantly crumbled. They could hold it in no longer and let out a great, heart-wrenching wail. Their loved ones, could they be lying in those cold coffins? Those tiny, milky cries of "Dada," like pebbles tossed into a calm lake, sent ripples through the crowd. After several rounds of wine and courses of food, the atmosphere at the victory banquet reached a fever pitch. Buoyed by the alcohol, Luo Chong dropped a bombshell. "My brothers, you have fought hard. I've already instructed the arsenal to accelerate the development of new firearms. When you've finished your rest and reorganization, you'll all be getting new equipment. New guns. Holy hell." The words were like a ladle of cold water tossed into a wok of boiling oil. The entire banquet hall erupted in an instant. Chu Bing's eyes were as wide as saucers. His face flushed a deep crimson. He shot to his feet, a grin stretching nearly from ear to ear. "Chief, what are they like? Tell us. Tell us now. Easy now. I'll tell you everything," Luo Chong said, taking a leisurely sip of wine, whetting everyone's appetite. "First, you'll still have your old friends, the bolt-action rifles and shotguns. But these are reinforced versions, reforged with new types of steel. Their barrel life is exceptional." He paused, a sly glint in his eye. "But beyond that, we have a few real heavy hitters. Because the new steel is highly resistant to heat and incredibly hard, the rapid-fire weapons we couldn't manage before. Well, the time is now ripe." Luo Chong raised one finger. "First, the semi-automatic rifle. It uses a gas-operated principle. To put it simply, you fire one shot, and it automatically goes pop, ejecting the shell casing, and then clack, chambering the next round. All you have to do is keep pulling the trigger. Say goodbye to the miserable days of manually working the bolt." The officers present listened with gleaming eyes, their breathing growing heavy. Chu Bing, ever the impatient one, jumped in. "My God, does that mean if my finger is fast enough, I can go bang 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 and empty a 5-round clip in the blink of an eye?" "Precisely." Luo Chong snapped his fingers, a smile on his face that said, "You catch on quick. That's the idea. This gun is all about the rate of fire. With that kind of fire density, even if your accuracy isn't perfect, you can keep the enemy's head down. Think about it. In the time it takes a bolt action to fire once, a semi-auto can fire several shots. With a hail of lead whistling over your head, would you dare to peek out? The moment you do, it's lights out." The men subconsciously ducked their heads, already imagining the hellish scene of being pinned down by a storm of bullets. Just then, Chu Bing frowned again. "Chief, the rate of fire is faster, but if you burn through 5 rounds in an instant, doesn't it still take time to reload? In the end, it doesn't seem like the sustained firepower is that much greater." "Good question." Luo Chong nodded in approval. "Which is why I had them double the magazine capacity. 10 rounds. Besides, war isn't a video game. You can't just hold down the trigger and go rat-a-tat-tat. Accuracy is king. If you can't hit anything, 100,000 rounds won't do you any good." It was a revelation. The men all nodded in understanding. "Chief, you said there were several new types. Besides the semi-auto, what else is there?" Chu Bing pressed on like a curious child. Luo Chong gave a mysterious smile and raised a second finger. "The second is called a machine gun. This thing is a true monster of firepower. As long as you hold down the trigger, the bullets spray out in an endless stream, rat-a-tat-tat-tat, brrrt, unleashing dozens of rounds in the blink of an eye. Because the rate of fire is so fast, a normal magazine can't keep up. So it uses an ammunition belt, a long strip of canvas with hundreds of rounds threaded through it, feeding directly into the gun." Luo Chong grew more excited as he spoke. standing up to gesture with his hands. Picture this. You're defending a position, and I'm leading the attack. All I have to do is set up a few machine guns from a distance and sweep them back and forth across your trenches, creating a fan-shaped web of fire. Who among you would dare raise your head? To raise your head is to die? After just a few minutes of that suppression, my infantry could charge right up to your faces for some close-quarters combat. Conversely, if I'm defending with machine guns and you're charging, it doesn't matter how many men you have. In the face of that dense curtain of bullets, you'd all be cut to ribbons. Now tell me, how do you fight a war like that? Hiss. A sharp, collective intake of breath swept through the room. The men could feel a cold chill run down their spines. Good heavens. This machine gun was too damn terrifying. Once this thing was on the battlefield, war would become a one-sided slaughter. Chu Bing swallowed hard, feeling his entire philosophy of war being turned upside down. He asked with a tremor in his voice, "Chief, what about? What about the other one?" "The last is a smaller piece," Luo Chong said with a wave of his hand. "A small pistol, mainly for self-defense. Its range is short, only accurate out to 20 or 30 meters, but it's magazine-fed, holds a dozen rounds, and it's also semi-automatic. You can fire it bang-bang in quick succession. It's light enough to use with one hand." Insane. Absolutely insane. The officers in the hall could find no other words to describe their feelings. Chu Bing was so excited his face was beet red. He rubbed his hands together like a child desperate for candy. "Chief, so when can we go try out these treasures? What's the rush?" Luo Chong shot him an exasperated look. "First, go back and properly assess your soldiers' merits and distribute their rewards. Then, set up a leave rotation. Let your brothers go home and see their wives and children. Especially the soldiers from the south. They're far from home, so let them go first. Once all that is settled, you go home for a couple of days yourself and hold that newborn son of yours. When you get back, I'll arrange the firearms trial." "You got it. I'll remember. I'll get it done tomorrow," Chu Bing said, scratching his head in embarrassment. The victory banquet lasted late into the night. The next day, just as the sky began to lighten, the entire military station came to life once more. After morning exercises, washing up, and breakfast, the men fell into formation to board the train. With a long, drawn-out whistle, the train, filled with heroes, slowly began to move toward home. A few days later, a message arrived from Lin Fei in New Steel Prefecture. The prototypes for the new firearms Luo Chong had been pushing for were all complete. A brand new era of warfare was about to be ushered in by the hands of Luo Chong himself. The family portrait of this fresh batch of new weapons was a bit lopsided. The 7.62mm bolt-action rifles managed to scrape together 20 units, enough to outfit a small squad. But the legendary Type 56 semi-automatic rifle consisted of just 3 solitary prototypes, looking as pitiful as lone saplings in an empty field. The PCAM pattern general-purpose machine gun was the heavyweight, only child of the group, just a single unit, and a half-finished one at that. Lacking a proper tripod, it had to make do on its built-in bipod, slumming it as a light machine gun for the time being. As for the last 2 pistols, the less said, the better. They had cobbled together 5 Beretta 92-style sidearms, enough to arm a poker game. And the high-powered Browning 1911-style pistol? There was only one in the entire world. A true one-of-a-kind. Though the numbers were pathetically small, they were more than enough for some basic testing. After all, with the Han tribe's current R&D capabilities, the so-called testing was limited to 2 philosophical questions. Does it go bang? And is it sturdy? As for high-tech gadgets like high-speed cameras to track bullet trajectories or professional instruments to measure muzzle velocity. Sorry, Luo Chong couldn't even produce a single component for such things. So, while it was nominally a firearms test, it was actually a large-scale violent aesthetics experience session. Luo Chong had just received the news when he happened to run into that rascal Chu Bing, who was reporting back from leave. He promptly nabbed him. "Chief, you were looking for me?" Chu Bing asked, getting straight to the point the moment he entered the room. "Yes." Luo Chong put down the document in his hands and cut to the chase. A letter came from New Steel Prefecture. They said the prototypes for those new guns are all ready and asked me to go take a look. What do you say? Interested in seeing something new? My God. Chu Bing's eyes went wide as dinner plates, so excited he nearly jumped out of his skin. They're finished already? Of course, Luo Chong said perfunctorily, though inwardly he was on a sarcastic tirade. No kidding. The machine tools are ready. There's more than enough top-grade steel. I've given them all the manpower and money they need. And I, the transmigrator, even transcribed the standard-issue answer key for the design blueprints myself. If they still couldn't produce it, I'd have to personally step in and let them experience what physical enlightenment feels like. Yes, yes. Chu Bing rubbed his hands together, as excited as a child. So when are we going? Let's make it today. Luo Chong glanced at the grandfather clock on the wall. The hands had just passed 8. If we leave now on horseback, we should make it before lunch. You got it. Just like that, the two were off without another sip of water. Hoofbeats flew and dust churned as a large contingent of men and horses thundered towards New Steel Prefecture. As noon approached, Lin Fei was already waiting anxiously at the entrance of the Research Institute. The institute, now tasked with the top-secret mission of weapons development, had its security cranked to the absolute maximum. It was surrounded by layer after layer of Luo Chong's most elite Jinwu guard. Forget a fly, even a speck of dust would have to show its papers before getting out. The engineers involved in the R&D were only given blueprints for disparate, scattered components. Each one was like a player in an extremely complex jigsaw puzzle, but none of them could see the complete picture. Only the project lead could finally assemble these parts into their final form. And these core personnel, the ones who could access the complete puzzle, enjoyed the top-tier perk of having personal bodyguards. 2 burly Jinwu guards followed them at all times, ostensibly for their protection, but in reality, well, one could guess. What's the rush? Luo Chong poured cold water on Chu Bing's eager expression. The sky could be falling, and we'd still eat first. Besides, aren't there still 2 types of pistols we haven't seen? And this machine gun, have you figured it out yet? Have you thought about how you'll equip it, how you'll train with it, how you'll use it? Let me tell you, you better study this properly. If you can't master this new equipment, you'll see how I deal with you. After Luo Chong's tirade, Chu Bing wilted like a frostbitten eggplant. He quieted down and began to carefully, meticulously examine the large weapon gleaming with a cold, metallic luster before him. Lin Fei, standing beside them, immediately began his product presentation. Commander Chu, you see, the one just now was a semi-automatic rifle. You pull the trigger once, it fires once. This one, however, is fully automatic. As long as you hold down the trigger and there are bullets, it will just keep going rat-a-tat-tat. As Lin Fei explained, he demonstrated. With a click, he flipped open the receiver cover, fed a canvas ammunition belt into the feed tray, and then, with a resounding clack, pulled the charging handle to chamber around. The entire sequence was as smooth as flowing water, filled with a mechanical, violent beauty. The Chief's design concept is a general-purpose machine gun, which is to say, you can either carry it into the charge, or you can mount it in a defensive position to lay down a steel web of fire. When used as a light machine gun, you can attach a 100-round ammo box underneath, grab the bipod with your left hand, and fire on the move. When used as a heavy machine gun, you lock this thing onto a heavy mount, place a 300-round large ammo box next to it, and whoever comes, dies. Chu Bing nodded repeatedly as he listened, but he also realized a serious problem. One man couldn't possibly handle this thing. The empty gun weighed over 15 pounds, almost as much as 2 rifles. Add a few boxes of ammunition and that dead-heavy tripod. Chief, he said with a frown, this machine gun is too heavy. And at that rate of fire, wouldn't it burn through several boxes of ammo in a minute? For a single battle, how many men would we need just to carry its ammunition? It's good that you've thought of that. Luo Chong nodded in approval, then added, you've forgotten one more thing, the barrel. My requirement is that each machine gun, in addition to its own barrel, must be equipped with 3 spares. That's 4 barrels in total. Someone has to carry those too. What? Chu Bing was even more confused. Didn't you say it uses a new, heat-resistant steel? Why does it still need replacement barrels? If you have to change this thing on the battlefield, won't you become a sitting duck? Lin Fei, you can enlighten him, Luo Chong said with a nod in Lin Fei's direction. Yes, sir. Lin Fei explained. Commander Chu, no matter how good the steel is, it can't withstand that kind of abuse. The rate of fire is too high, so the barrel heats up quickly and cools down slowly. If you don't change it, the barrel will eventually start to glow red-hot and soften. Finally, with a bang, the gun and the man will both be done for. As he spoke, he demonstrated. He gripped the carrying handle on the barrel, pushed it forward, and with a click, the entire barrel slid out. He then inserted a new one and locked it back in place. The entire process was incredibly smooth and unbelievably fast. It took less than 5 seconds. My God, Chu Bing's eyes were practically glued to the weapon. This design is brilliant. After inspecting the machine gun, the group moved on to the pistols. 2 classic handguns lay quietly on the table, exquisite and deadly. Chu Bing snatched up the Beretta-style pistol and turned it over and over in his hands. He found the trigger, the grip, the barrel, but where did the bullets go in? Where did the casings pop out? He fiddled with it for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. He was completely stumped. "Chief, how? How do you use this thing?" he asked, his face a mask of embarrassment. Luo Chong roared with laughter, picked up the other pistol, and gave a demonstration himself. "See this little button on the grip? Press it with your thumb." Chu Bing did as he was told. With a soft click, a black metal magazine dropped out from the bottom of the grip. "So that's where it is." "Lin Fei," Luo Chong said, weighing the gun in his hand, feeling an unbearable itch in his fingers. "Is there a place we can test this little toy?" "Yes. The pistol range is this way, please." The so-called firing range was just a 100-meter-long dead-end alley that had been brutally carved out by a bulldozer. At the far end was a massive mound of earth, simple and crude, but exceptionally effective. The group arrived at the firing positions in a grand procession. Beside them stood a simple table knocked together from wooden planks. A guard swiftly laid out the ammunition boxes and several pistols with a clatter. With practiced hands, Luo Chong pressed the magazine release button. Click! The magazine popped out. As he calmly pressed the gleaming yellow bullets into it, one by one, he gave Chu Bing a live demonstration. "Watch closely. Bullet tip forward, just press them in one after another. This gun uses 9mm caliber rounds, and the magazine holds 15. Just fill it up." Chu Bing watched, mesmerized. He already had a foundation in handling rifles and shotguns, and the loading principle for this pistol was similar enough that he understood it almost instantly. Once both of them had their magazines fully loaded, Luo Chong didn't rush him to insert it back into the gun. Instead, he continued gesturing with the empty weapon. "See this big block of iron on the outside of the barrel that slides back and forth? That's called the slide. To chamber a round, you just pull it back like this, schlick. Now, I'll teach you how to take it apart for maintenance. First, pull the slide all the way back. See this little lever? Turn it down halfway, and then the slide can be pushed forward. The whole gun separates into a top and bottom half." Chu Bing followed his example, and in a few swift movements, the gun in his hands was a pile of parts. When this gun is issued to the troops in the future, this is as far as you'll need to break it down for routine maintenance. Just wipe the inside and outside of the barrel clean, and then put it back together the same way. Chu Bing understood perfectly. It was the same principle as maintaining a rifle. Reassembly, chambering a round, all in one smooth motion. "Attention!" Luo Chong's tone turned serious. "Once a round is chambered, don't you dare touch the trigger carelessly. Watch out for accidental discharge." Chu Bing nodded and took a deep breath. The young man seemed to have a natural intuition for firearms. Almost instinctively, he raised the gun, aiming at a man-shaped wooden target 20 meters away using the sights on the slide. Then, he pulled the trigger. Crack! A sharp gunshot exploded in the narrow firing range. Driven by the recoil, the slide slammed backward, and a hot shell casing flew out of the ejection port in a spinning arc with a ping. In almost the same instant, the slide was pushed back into place by the recoil spring, chambering the next round with a satisfying clack. The entire process was as fast as lightning. Zing! The bullet tore through the air with a piercing shriek and drilled precisely into the wooden target's chest. A hit. A jolt of joy went through Chu Bing. He hadn't expected this little thing to be so easy to handle. He raised the gun again, this time aiming at a circular steel plate hanging nearby. Crack! Ting! The bullet struck the steel plate, erupting in a shower of sparks and producing a clear, lingering metallic clang. Now, Chu Bing was thoroughly hooked. This little pistol had decent power, an ingenious design, and was light and convenient. It was the perfect self-defense weapon. Just how did the chief's brain work? Crack! 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 He fired shot after shot, the massive 15-round capacity allowing him to shoot to his heart's content. This thing was even more satisfying than a rifle. No need to work a bolt, it chambered automatically, and it held an absurd number of bullets. Besides its shorter range, it was practically perfect. However, he had yet to realize that he had only tapped into 10% of the gun's potential. Just then, Luo Chong, having finished loading his own magazine, stepped forward and clapped him on the shoulder. "Watch me and learn. Today, I'm going to teach you what rapid reaction shooting is all about." Before the words had even left his mouth, Luo Chong's feet were apart, his body slightly lowered, and his two-handed grip on the pistol instantly became incredibly aggressive. Then, a series of gunshots erupted like popping firecrackers. Crack, 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 crack. He made a semi-automatic pistol sound like it was on full auto. The distant steel plate target was struck relentlessly, ringing ding 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 dong dong like a pathetic pendulum, swinging wildly. Every shot was a hit. Chu Bing and Lin Fei stood beside him, completely dumbfounded. Holy crap, you can use a pistol like that? Even the nearby Praetorian guards were practically drooling, their eyes screaming with the desire to rush over and have a go themselves. Chief, Chief, let me. I want to try too. Chu Bing, pumped up as if on adrenaline, snatched Luo Chong's position and unleashed another frantic barrage at the target. Luo Chong smiled and casually picked up the lone, Browning 1911-style pistol lying beside them. This gun had a larger caliber and more power, but its magazine only held 7 rounds. After Chu Bing had had his fun, Luo Chong stepped forward again, demonstrated the disassembly and reassembly of the 1911, and then walked to the firing position. Boom, 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 boom. A deeper, more muffled series of gunshots rang out. 7 rounds gone in a flash. Curious, Chu Bing picked up the other one and tried it, but after firing, he just shook his head. This gun is no good, Chief. Not only does it hold fewer bullets, but the recoil is ridiculous. It's making my wrist go numb. When we have that other good one, why bother making this? It's just as well you don't like it. Luo Chong toyed with the 2 guns in his hands, a cryptic smile on his face. Because this one was never intended for you army boys. Then who's it for? Chu Bing asked, surprised. For the constables of the local governments, Luo Chong explained. When they're arresting criminals, they don't need sustained fire. What they need is the immense stopping power to put a man down with a single shot. This gun, no matter how burly the man, one shot will guarantee he's on the ground singing, "I surrender." Different needs, different equipment. Only then did Chu Bing understand. After testing the pistols, it was noon. The group had a simple lunch, and in the afternoon, they hauled a cart full of guns and ammunition back to the Schinsguards barracks to conduct more comprehensive testing. At 3 in the afternoon, the sound of gunfire from the barracks' firing range never ceased. To test the lifespan of the new barrels, soldiers lined up and took turns firing at the targets, bang, 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 relentlessly. For the entire afternoon, 10,000 rounds of ammunition were fired. Meanwhile, in a simulated trench on the other side, another team of soldiers tested the new gun's portability, charging with the weapons, leaping over ditches, and turning quickly in the narrow confines of the trenches. War was never a dinner party. Behind the deployment of every new weapon lay countless tedious and rigorous tests. The subsequent testing phase took a demented turn. A simulated sandstorm? Easy. Just bury the gun in a pile of sand, dig it out, and keep firing. A torrential downpour? No problem. Blast the gun with a fire hose until it's a drowned rat, then open fire. An armed river crossing? A walk in the park. Toss the gun in the river for a few hours, fish it out, shake off the water, and carry on. The most brutal test was the swamp environment simulation. They plunged the gun directly into a pit of muck. When they pulled it out, the entire weapon was coated in a thick layer of sludge that emitted a captivating aroma. In that state, dripping with mud and water, they chambered a round and fired. Bang! The shot was still crisp. Perhaps it was the exceptional craftsmanship of the prototype, or maybe that molybdenum steel really was something special. In any case, after a full tour through this 18 levels of hell torture test, the new rifle didn't so much as hiccup. Its function remained perfectly normal. As for accuracy, my friend, the muzzle was caked with mud. You had to aim with faith alone. Were you really expecting to score a bullseye? The fact that it fired at all was a victory. Of course, there was one final, ultimate test. The extreme cold environment test at dozens of degrees below zero. Unfortunately, it was the height of summer. Even Heiyuan Prefecture up north was hot enough to grill kebabs. Where on earth were they going to find a world of ice and snow? This particular item on the agenda had to be regrettably skipped. However, based on the performance of the older model rifle during the northern expedition, its resistance to cold was quite good. As the Pro Max version, the new model was unlikely to fail in the northeastern winter. Meanwhile, the portability test also yielded results. The new rifle was shorter and lighter. On a forced march with full gear, the soldiers' backs no longer ached and their legs no longer hurt. In short, it was a lot easier. Especially during the simulated jungle traversal, the downward curving bolt handle no longer got snagged on branches. It was practically black magic. With the environmental and portability tests passed with flying colors, all that remained were the 3 hard metrics: power, precision, and lifespan. The power test was simple and brutal: shoot steel plates. They wanted to see, at various distances, which was the true king of can openers, the standard bullet or the steel core armor-piercing round. The result was no surprise. The improved 7.62mm full-power cartridge had superior penetration, and its recoil was even reduced. It was a textbook example of more bang for your buck. Next came the long and tedious lifespan test. Bang, 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 bang. On the firing range, the gunshots never ceased from morning till night. A full 10,000 rounds. If this had been the old model rifle, The rifling would have been worn smooth halfway through, effectively devolving it from a rifled firearm to a smoothbore. The bullets would have flown out with a drunken snake trajectory. But the new rifle, after enduring a 10,000-round baptism by fire and following a simple cleaning and maintenance, still had clearly visible rifling when Luo Chong shone a bright flashlight down the barrel, despite some wear. This meant the gun could still fight. The final accuracy test was personally handled by Chu Bing. 300 meters, 350, 400, all the way to the limit of naked eye visibility, 600 meters. Bang, bang, bang. The gunshots were steady and rhythmic. To ensure the fairness and impartiality of the results, Luo Chong randomly selected 2 more soldiers to repeat the testing procedure with the same rifle. The final results were in. After firing 10,000 rounds, the new rifle's accuracy within 300 meters had barely decreased. The average score was still above 90 points. The collective shock was palpable. When this result was announced, everyone was stunned. This meant the service life of the new rifle was at least 10,000 rounds to start. This single improvement would save the Han tribe an astronomical amount in military expenditures. After a series of truly demonic tests, this improved version of the bolt-action rifle was finally officially finalized. After much consideration, Luo Chong decided to continue the previous naming convention, designating it the Standard Rifle Type 2. Simple, direct, and with a touch of the engineer's romance. The next day, the testing continued. The main event of the day was the collection of new toys that everyone had been desperately waiting for: the 2 pistols, the semi-automatic rifle, and that one single superweapon, the general-purpose machine gun. The testing procedure for the pistols was largely the same as the day before, the usual suspects of accuracy, power, environment, and lifespan. Chu Bing delegated this task to the 1st Battalion commander and stuck to Luo Chong like a shadow. He knew the real show was about to begin. "Chief," he sidled up to Luo Chong and asked conspiratorially, "when we're testing the semi-auto and the machine gun, are we going to use those tracer rounds to see how cool the bullets look when they fly?" "If you want to see the trajectory, you'll definitely need tracers." Luo Chong turned to Lin Fei. "Old Lin, did you bring any tracer rounds?" At this, Lin Fei's face flushed with embarrassment. Reporting to the chief, the production of this new ammunition is already low, and this special edition tracer round is even scarcer. I brought 1,000 rounds for the semi-auto and 5,000 for the machine gun. Is that enough? We'll be frugal with them." "It's enough." Luo Chong waved his hand dismissively. "For the machine gun belts, load them in a sequence of 4 standard rounds to 1 tracer round. Chu Bing, you take some men and get it done. Don't mess up the order." "Yes, sir." With a nod, Chu Bing went to oversee the task. As he watched the soldiers busily pressing rounds into the ammunition belts, his eyes filled with an unprecedented level of anticipation. "Chief, I've assigned the semi-automatic rifle test to the 2nd Battalion commander, following the same procedure as yesterday's bolt-action test. But this big fellow, this machine gun, how should we put it through its paces?" Chu Bing asked, rubbing his hands together, his face alight with excitement. Luo Chong pointed to the already loaded ammunition belts nearby. "First, get enough ammo ready. We'll standardize on 250-round belts to make the math easy. 40 belts, exactly 10,000 rounds. The test items are similar to the rifles, but the durability test has to be last. This is our one and only prototype. If we break it right at the start, what's the point of testing anything else?" Chu Bing nodded repeatedly, hanging on every word. "So, do we test portability first? Or accuracy?" "Portability first." Luo Chong waved his hand. "Forced march, through the trenches, through the woods, the old trifecta. After that, we'll do the accuracy shooting. Lin Fei, you assist. For the accuracy test, I want all tracer rounds. I want to see the trajectory." He paused, his tone becoming serious. "Also, the machine gun's accuracy test starts at 400 meters. Then we add 100 meters for each increment, all the way up to 1,000. As for the passing standard," a playful smile touched the corners of Luo Chong's mouth. "A machine gun is all about suppression. So we won't test single shots. We'll test bursts and sweeps. A burst is when you pull the trigger and release, letting out 3 to 5 rounds, rat-tat-tat. A sweep is even more interesting. On the range, set up 10 man-shaped targets in a row. The shooter gets 50 rounds to sweep from left to right, or right to left, in one go. 10 targets, at least 1 hit on each, and it's a pass. 20 hits is good. 30 is excellent. If any soldier can manage more than 30 hits, you treat him like gold and make him a specialist." Chu Bing's heart pounded as he listened, his tactical knowledge being completely rewritten. He used to only know how to judge a rifleman's marksmanship. Now he had performance metrics for a machine gunner. And these standards were outrageously different. With a machine gun, 10 hits out of 50 was a pass. If a rifleman dared to shoot like that, the chief would probably skin him alive, screaming, "You wasteful brat. Do you think bullets grow on trees?" Chief, another question occurred to Chu Bing. Is there a specific standard for using bursts? For example, how many people do you use a burst on? There is, Luo Chong explained. For 3 people or fewer, use a short burst of 3 to 5 rounds. For 3 to 6 people, use a long burst of about 10 rounds. If you encounter a cluster of more than 6 targets, then don't be polite. Just sweep them down. But don't actually hold the trigger down. You have to fire rhythmically. Even if you sweep 50 rounds, as long as you hit one person, it's worth it. Also, this gun has a theoretical rate of fire of 700 rounds per minute. But remember this, you fire at most 200 rounds per minute. Changing a belt every minute is the absolute limit. Chu Bing and the 3rd Battalion commander beside him soaked up the information like sponges. So there were this many subtleties to the rat-a-tat-tat. After the portability and accuracy tests came the environmental trials. But this time, Luo Chong had a special request. This canvas ammunition belt has a fatal weakness. It's afraid of moisture, he said sternly. So when you're doing the water immersion test, you can soak the gun in water, soak it in mud, but the ammunition belt must not get wet. When you pull the gun out, shake the water off, then load the belt and fire. There were no objections to this special treatment. It was a superweapon, after all. What was wrong with it being a little more delicate than a rifle? It should be treasured. Who would have the heart to truly abuse it in a mud pit? Chu Bing declared that if anyone dared to do so, he would be the first to break that person's legs. As the various test orders were issued, the entire barracks firing range echoed with a continuous roar of gunfire. Especially at the machine gun range, the sound of rapid fire, rat-a-tat-tat-tat, was like a giant magnet, instantly attracting the gazes of countless soldiers. My God, what's that sound? It's like a string of firecrackers. I think it's called a general-purpose machine gun. Let's go, quick, let's see. The crowd of onlooking soldiers grew, each one more shocked than the last. Wow, that's insane. Look at the bullets. They're getting sucked in. Whoosh, whoosh. The casings on the ground are piling up like harvested wheat. Good heavens, I'd die happy if I could be a machine gunner. Dream on. It's such a precious piece of equipment, a company would be lucky to get one. Our entire Shin's Guard has over 2,600 men. We'd be lucky to get 9 machine gunners. It'll never be our turn. Listening to the soldiers' discussions, Chu Bing also began to calculate. He sidled up to Luo Chong and humbly asked for guidance. Chief, if this machine gun is finalized, how should it be equipped? The Shin's Guard is my personal guard. Your equipment will naturally be top tier, Luo Chong said slowly, his eyes on the distant targets. The standard is 1 machine gun per squad, and each platoon gets an additional heavy machine gun tripod. As for the other regional units, 1 per platoon. Their firepower will be far inferior to yours. Hearing this, the faces of Chu Bing and the 3rd Battalion commander broke into wide, crinkling grins. The Shin's Guard was truly the chief's favorite. Don't get too happy too soon. Luo Chong's face suddenly turned stern. The weapons have been upgraded, but if your tactics are still stuck in the past, you'll still get your asses handed to you. I'm telling you, give me a poorly equipped regional unit, and I can still easily annihilate you well-equipped fools. The smiles instantly froze on their faces. They began to wonder, with such an overwhelming equipment advantage, how could the chief be so confident in saying such a thing? Could it be that there was some earth-shattering, battle-reversing secret to the use of this machine gun that they didn't know? Luo Chong knew in his heart that the new weapons brought more than just an increase in firepower. They heralded a complete tactical revolution. To use a machine gun with the old line and volley tactics would be a criminal waste of superior hardware. Tactics like forward machine gun bunkers, interlocking fields of fire, and surprise attacks from hidden pillboxes, commonplace in the war films of later generations, were a different dimension of warfare in this era. Then there was offense. How to use terrain and smoke screens to deliver the machine gun like a dagger to the most critical point. And during a charge, how the machine gun's roar could weave a shield of death for one's comrades. If he didn't teach them these things, the generals of the Han tribe would have to learn them through the blood of countless soldiers, paying a heartbreakingly expensive tuition fee in lives. Furthermore, when the enemy's firepower was overwhelmingly superior, how should one's own side attack with inferior weapons? Sapping, the tactic of advancing by digging trenches, had left a deep mark on the history of warfare. Even Li Yunlong in drawing sword had used it to get his Italian cannon. No, that's not right. to dig trenches right under the enemy's nose. Of course, real war was far crueler than any television drama. It involved armies of hundreds of thousands on battlefields ablaze with artillery, using nothing but entrenching tools to dig an underground Great Wall to victory. However, now was not the time for a tactical theory class. The most pressing task was to thoroughly understand the performance of these new toys right in front of them. The first to hand in its graduation thesis was the semi-automatic rifle. With the experience of testing the bolt-action rifle the day before, coupled with the semi-auto's faster loading and fiercer rate of fire, the soldiers handled the tests with consummate ease. Soon, all test subjects were passed with flying colors. With a stroke of his pen, Luo Chong officially designated it the Standard Rifle, Type 3, the third generation of rifle, and ordered it to immediately enter the mass production preparation phase. Next, the two pistol models passed all their trials without any suspense. It was no joke. The Beretta 92F and the Browning 1911 were the evergreens of the firearms world, classics among classics. Although Luo Chong was just a knockoff factory boss, he couldn't be blamed when the original designs were so damn brilliant. Aided by the black magic material that was molybdenum steel, the lifespan tests for both pistols also easily surpassed the 10,000-round mark with no significant loss of accuracy. Luo Chong gave them a name with a certain martial arts flair, the short sword pistols. The 7-round version was the short sword, Type 1, and the 15-round version was the short sword, Type 2. Functionally, weren't they just like the short swords and daggers of the cold weapon era, the final tool for self-defense? The name was a perfect fit. While the pistol and semi-auto rifle teams were already popping champagne in celebration, the atmosphere over at the machine gun range was a bit awkward. Logically, with the machine gun's water-hosing rate of fire, 20,000 rounds should have been expended in no time. But the reality was, half an hour of loading for half a minute of shooting. It couldn't be helped. It was purely manual loading. Under the blazing sun, the soldiers sweated profusely, like diligent little bees, inserting bullets one by one into the canvas ammunition belts. The efficiency was truly touching. "Chief," Chu Bing said, scratching his head in frustration as he watched the constipated loading speed. "Loading this machine gun is too much of a pain. If we were really on the battlefield, would we have to start preparing the ammunition a month in advance? Otherwise, at the rate of 1 belt per minute, there's no way we could load them on the spot." Luo Chong looked at the scene before him and slapped his forehead. A mistake. He had been so focused on copying the firearms blueprints that he'd completely forgotten about the hand-cranked belt loader. "Stop! Everyone stop!" he ordered immediately. "In this situation, what the hell are we testing? By the time you've loaded the belts, the barrel will have cooled down on its own. What's the point of testing its overheating performance then?" Hearing this, Chu Bing and the 3rd Battalion commander hung their heads in shame, thinking they had angered the chief with their poor arrangements. Lin Fei, standing nearby, didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. However, Luo Chong didn't blame them. Instead, he called Lin Fei over. "Old Lin, you know about Bai Chi's hand-cranked mimeograph machine in the printing department, right?" Lin Fei nodded, a look of confusion on his face. "Excellent." Luo Chong snapped his fingers. "Have the team that built that thing build me a hand-cranked belt loader." "A hand-cranked belt loader?" Lin Fei, Chu Bing, and the 3rd Battalion commander all exclaimed in unison, their jaws nearly hitting the floor. My God, such a divine tool existed? Just how many treasures was the chief hiding in that brain of his? Luo Chong didn't keep them in suspense, immediately dictating the design principles on the spot. A base on the bottom, a funnel on top for the rounds, a hand crank gear in the middle with 2 push rods, one to open the belt link, the other to seat the bullet. Do you understand? Do I need to draw you a sketch? Lin Fei had worked with machinery for years. He understood such a simple mechanical structure the moment he heard it. "Rest assured, Chief. I guarantee I'll have it delivered within 3 days." As it turned out, Lin Fei had underestimated the all-nighter capacity of his own research institute. The little gadget had a simple structure with no real technical difficulty. A sketch was drawn in just over an hour, a wooden mock-up was made in 2, and by the next day, a steel prototype was fresh off the line. The R&D team had even gone the extra mile by adding a vertical feed plate, specifically for sequencing tracer rounds, an incredibly thoughtful touch. The final product was small, sturdy, and durable, weighing only a few pounds in total. It could be used to produce ammunition anytime, anywhere, even while squatting in a trench. The 3 days weren't even needed. By the evening of the second day, Lin Fei had rushed back to the barracks with 2 brand-new hand-cranked loaders and a massive quantity of ammunition. Rat-a-tee-tee-tee-tee-tee-tee-tee. The roar of the machine gun once again echoed through the mountain forest. This time, efficiency was maxed out. A dozen soldiers took turns firing while a few others cranked the loaders. Empty belts were sent over and quickly returned, fully reloaded, creating a perfect firepower cycle. In less than 2 hours, the task of firing 20,000 rounds was complete. Chu Bing and the others silently calculated in their heads. 20,000 rounds, nearly 7 crates, in a single Shurchen, 2 hours. The logistical pressure was absolutely terrifying. Report. Firing mission complete, awaiting instructions. Luo Chong nodded and said to Lin Fei, go check the barrel. If there are no problems, begin the second accuracy test. The barrel was removed and doused with cool water, hissing as a plume of white steam rose into the air. Soldiers wiped the moisture away with dry cloths, then took out cleaning rods and brushes to scrub the gunpowder residue from inside the barrel. After a thorough cleaning, the barrel gleamed, inside and out. Lin Fei shone a carbide lamp down the barrel. Under its bright beam, the rifling, though worn, remained distinct. Molybdenum steel had once again proven its durability. It's a go, Luo Chong announced. Next up was the much-anticipated nighttime precision firing session. As dusk settled, it was the perfect time to test the trajectory of the tracer rounds. A soldier named Little Li distinguished himself and was handpicked by Chu Bing to be tonight's main shooter. The kid was a natural with the machine gun. After firing just a few hundred rounds, his skill had already left the others in the dust. Little Li, you're up. Yes, sir. Little Li lay prone on the sandbags, his movements clean and efficient. Rat-tat-tat-tat. A rapid 5-round burst ripped through the night sky like a bolt of lightning. 400 meters away, 3 targets fell. Chief, look at my soldier. What do you think? Talented, right? Chu Bing sidled up to Luo Chong, beaming with pride, as if presenting a priceless treasure. Luo Chong nodded, his face impassive. He is indeed talented, accurate, and with a good sense of rhythm. His tone shifted. But what's most commendable is his control. Unlike some people who don't know when to let go of the trigger, always wanting to squeeze off a few more rounds for the thrill of it. Just then, Little Li began a 50-round continuous sweep. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. The muzzle spat fire. The tracer rounds mixed into the belt streaked through the air with bright green trails, like vipers seeking prey, fanning out towards the distant target group. His control over the machine gun was simply phenomenal. Chu Bing grinned from ear to ear. The chief is right. Little Li's 50-round sweep is exactly 5 passes. 10 rounds a pass, 1 bullet per target. No more, no less, right on the mark. Don't get too carried away, Luo Chong said, pouring cold water on his enthusiasm. I don't need one prodigy. I need the entire unit's skill level to rise. This only works because our enemies are poorly equipped. Otherwise, on a battlefield, the first to be taken out would be a standout machine gunner like him. If I were leading a team against you, I'd first assign a group of sharpshooters to specifically target your machine gunners. For every one you send up, I'll take one down. I'll turn your machine guns into piles of scrap metal. The smile on Chu Bing's face froze instantly. A cold sweat broke out on his back. There was a hidden meaning in those words. The chief meant the casualty rate for machine gunners would be sky high, and they needed to train several replacements. He suddenly remembered what the chief had said before about the 3-man machine gun team. Besides the main gunner, there was an assistant gunner and an ammunition bearer. So, these 2 assistants weren't just for support, they were the reserves. The moment the main gunner fell, they had to take his place immediately. Even the other riflemen in the squad had to be capable of operating the machine gun. Thinking of it that way, being a talented machine gunner was a high-risk profession, one of the first to die on the battlefield. Chu Bing suddenly felt a headache coming on. He shared his thoughts with Luo Chong, who nodded in confirmation. Exactly. In the future, a machine gun team must have a primary gunner and a secondary gunner. The primary gunner's score must be excellent. The secondary gunners must be at least good. As for the other infantrymen, they must also undergo machine gun training and achieve a passable score. The tests up ahead continued, the green tracer rounds carving deadly arcs through the night sky. Chu Bing sidled over again. Chief, what about the pistols? How should they be equipped? The pistols, Luo Chong said casually. For now, they'll only be issued to officers at the platoon level and above, as well as the primary and secondary machine gunners. Their main weapons aren't suited for close combat, so the pistols are perfect for self-defense. Chu Bing silently calculated in his head. For the entire Guard, the total number of pistols would be less than 300. But on second thought, it made sense. On the main battlefield, you started shooting at each other from hundreds of meters away. A pistol's 50-meter effective range was indeed a bit lackluster. Chief, he asked again, I remember you saying before that besides these guns, there were other secret weapons? Hearing this, Luo Chong glanced sideways at Lin Fei, who was discussing something with another man, then said mysteriously to Chu Bing, "It's a type of small, indirect fire artillery called a mortar. The shells it fires explode on impact, and its destructive power is far greater than the old field guns. It's also very light. 3 men can carry it, and its range is up to 3 kilometers. My God!" Chu Bing's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Artillery? A 3-kilometer range? Exploding shells? And 3 men could carry it? This was a weapon of the gods. However, Luo Chong's next words nearly turned him to stone. "Oh, and I forgot to mention, this cannon has a rate of fire of 30 rounds per minute. One of its shells, when it lands, will scorch the earth for half an acre around, and any enemy within that range will be blown to bits." Chu Bing was speechless. He felt his worldview, in that single moment, being shattered into dust. He had seen the old field guns the tribe had made before. In his eyes, they were just glorified, oversized muskets, useless except for their longer range. But now, the chief was telling him there was a cannon that could shoot farther, had more power, was as light as a toy, and had a faster rate of fire than a rifle. "Chief, the mortar, has it been built yet?" Chu Bing asked tentatively, suppressing the wild joy in his heart. "Not yet," Luo Chong explained. "The cannon itself isn't difficult. The hard part is the shells." Chu Bing was slightly disappointed, but he figured as much. A weapon this heaven-defying couldn't just be built casually. That wouldn't be right. So, besides the mortar, what else is there? Luo Chong began counting on his fingers. There are also hand grenades, about the size of a duck egg. You throw them by hand. Toss one into a group of enemies, and with a bang, it explodes into a cloud of shrapnel with a kill radius of 6 or 7 meters. They're exceptionally effective when thrown into enemy trenches during a charge. The surrounding officers were already numb after hearing the introduction to the mortar. Even if Luo Chong now told them there was a weapon that could take a man's head from 1,000 miles away, they probably wouldn't find it strange. Besides mortars and hand grenades, there's another little thing called a personal grenade launcher. Luo Chong continued his impromptu weapons lecture. It's used much like a hand grenade, but it's more powerful, with a kill radius of up to 10 meters. But that's not the key point.